Hi friends, this is Jackie Williams, and today I want to share with you a masculine project using the High Tide stamp set. This is in the Occasions catalog, and this is the project. We're going to change it up a little bit just for fun, but this is one that is an adaptation off of an idea that I pulled out of a magazine that as demonstrators we received from Stampin' Up, and I thought it was quite a fun background idea. So let's start with that. I'll move that out of the way for now. Let's start with the background. So I have a piece of watercolor paper, and this is about 4 inches by 3.5, maybe slightly different. So what we want to do first is get both sides of the paper wet. The back just a little bit, and then the front fairly wet. And maybe even take your finger and move that color around just a bit. Then we're going to take a clear block and we're going to put ink right onto the block. So we're going to use Night of Navy and Pool Party, and then a bit of Calypso Coral. So I'm going to put Pool Party all over the block. And then Night of Navy, I'll just put kind of some along the bottom. And then the Calypso Coral, I'll put some just kind of at the top, about like that. Okay, then what we'll do is we're going to spritzer this as well. Not too much, but however much that was, just so till you start to see the ink start running. Now this is wet too, so it should, let me just get a little more, should accept the water pretty well. And then just line that up as best you can and smoosh it down. Now the color has been diluted with the water, so don't be afraid to put on quite a bit of color on there. Whoops, had a little spill. So we'll just let that, you can let the color run and move together. So I'll set that aside to dry, or you can even use a heat tool on that if you want to. Okay, so we'll let that dry. So the next thing is we'll prepare our lighthouse. So just got a scrap piece of paper. Now, these are photopolymer stamps, so you will want to use your stamping mat. And I'll start with the, ground first. So put that back on. And we're using crumb cake for this. And stamp that about there. Then we'll just stamp our lighthouse, and that's done in Night of Navy. So this is the, I'll just say the main image in Night of Navy. And then we'll do the accent pieces in the Pool Party. So, or maybe your detail pieces, that's the word I'm looking for. And just take your time to get that lined up. Right over the top like so in Pool Party. And then we'll just add a few other little details. This is soft suede and it's just a little bit more of the sand. Just to add some light and dark in there. Actually leave that open. And then the espresso, we'll do a little bit of grass. Something like that. Or actually it's probably not grass. So you can then, we'll have to scissor cut this out, which I've already done. And it doesn't take too long. You don't have to be too intricate about the details. And then I've got a piece that I've already prepared for the background. So I'm choosing to put the coral up at the top. You can put it wherever you want. So kind of decide where this is going to sit. So I think it will sit somewhere around there. And I'll stamp my words to fit around it. You can, of course, choose any of the words out of the stamp set that you like. And then one of my favorite things in this set is these birds, the seagulls. Okay, very nice. Also, one more thing, I will stamp just another little bit of grass or seaweed right there. So that will be shining through. Now I'm going to do some embossing on this. Let me find my emboss buddy. So cover this with the Emboss Buddy. And then place this about where you think it's going to sit. Actually, it might have to go a bit high. Should be okay. Should be all right about there. And then we're going to use the beacon stamp and Versamark. Then I'm going to just stamp that coming out from either side of the lighthouse. So you'll want to position this, or position your birds and your words so they aren't in the way. Although if you notice on my sample, the first one I did, it went over the birds a bit, but that's totally fine. Just gives it more of a layered look. Now with the emboss powder, instead of dipping it right in so that it's absolutely covered, I'm actually just going to sprinkle it. So we're only getting kind of a partial covering. And what I think that gives it just a bit more realistic look with the light. Okay, now we'll heat that up. Hopefully my lights won't blow. Okay, so that's how it will look finished. You'll be able to see maybe better in the photograph. So it's kind of patchy, and I'll show you again the first one I did. See how it goes over the birds, but that's okay. And you've got some missing bits, but to me it looks a little bit more like a beam with that. And then I would like to just ink around the edges of this watercolored piece. Well, that one seems to be, this works a bit better. Okay, one thing that's cool about this set is that there's so many pieces and images to it that you can really layer things up, and you can use it in different projects, and there's just so many possibilities. So I'm going to use dimensionals, and I'll use a few on the back of here. Because it's only a single layer of cardstock, you don't want to be too skimpy with the dimensionals, otherwise it will be very flimsy. This gives it a bit of stability. Okay, so place that in the beam where it needs to be, like so. And then I'm just going to flip it over and, okay, so I had an extra dimensional there. Flip it over and use my scissors and trim this to fit the cardstock. You could also use your trimmer if you would like to make sure it's absolutely exact. And then I'll add a little bit more edging on those areas where we just cut. Okay, and then we will mount that up onto the gold foil. Just got some water on it from my spritzing. And you want to be fairly generous with the adhesive on the watercolor paper because it's been wet, so it's maybe slightly misshapen. Okay, so something like that. Now our card front, our card base is Whisper White, and this time I chose to use, oh, the name just went out of my head. I think it's called the floral papers, and they're all blue, navy blue and white. On the sample I used out of the Cupcake and Carousels paper stack, which is in the Occasions catalog. So it's this paper that's got a nice vintage look to it. So either one, whichever you have or your preference. Okay, then I'll put some dimensionals on the back of here and put that onto our card front. And I did ink around the edges of the card as well. And last thing, let's do some linen thread. I think with nautical themes, you need this linen thread or something with kind of a rope feel. I just think it ties in really nicely. Okay, something like that. And let's give that a trim. And you might need to just get it to behave a little bit. Whoops. Get it to lay down. Okay. So we've got one on the navy paper and one on the coral print. I think both look great, so whichever you prefer. Then inside your card you'll have some scraps left and you can do another lighthouse.